Hey guys, it's Amy here, and today I'm going to be sharing with you the books that I read in May. So I managed to read 6 books in May, which was a shocker to me as I was finishing my degree at the time, so I'm very pleased with reading 6. I have in fact finished my degree now, which means I will be making a lot more videos over the summer and reading a lot more, which is really exciting. So let's get on and talk about the books that I read in May. The first book I finished in May was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and if you watch my last wrap up you'll know that I didn't manage to read all of this and it was taking me a really long time. I think it took me about 4 weeks to read this book, but once I finally got there I really enjoyed it. Also, I should mention that I've written reviews for all the books that I mentioned today and all of the books that I've read so far this year on my blog, so I'll link that down below. So this book follows the story of a mysterious circus that shows up in the middle of the night and only opens once midnight strikes. The level of detail that Morgenstern goes into describing the circus was absolutely brilliant, and I got that same feeling as when I read about Hogwarts for the first time and I really wanted to go there. When I was reading about the circus in this, I really just wanted to be there and I could feel like everything that was being talked about, and I really loved that. So I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars and I thought it was really good, and I would recommend to anyone who likes a good mystery, fantasy, romance. Everything was tied up in this novel and it was really good. The next book I finished this month was Amazing and Extraordinary Facts on J.R.R. Tolkien by Colin Duriez. I was reading this book for a few months as it's not really one that you sit down and read from beginning to end. It's more of one that you dip in and out of, more of a coffee table book, and I thought it was really good. It was really interesting finding out things about J.R.R. Tolkien that I may not have known before, and just the way it's laid out on the page just made it really interesting to read, like little snippets and indentations of things and pictures and quotes and stuff, which made it really interesting, and it was a really good format for the book to be in. So I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, and if you're a fan of Tolkien as well, then I'm sure you would love to have this on your shelf and maybe learn some facts about Tolkien that you didn't know before. The third book I read this month is one that I am really excited to speak about, and it was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This is the first Austen novel that I've read and I absolutely adored it. It has now taken the top spot for my favourite classic and I can't wait to read more from Austen. If you don't know what it's about, Pride and Prejudice follows the story of the 5 Bennet sisters and their antics and things that happen to them as they are growing up and as men and things are being introduced into their lives. From reading this book you can definitely tell that Jane Austen was so far ahead of her time. Within the first couple of pages I was laughing at the sarcastic nature of Mr. Bennet. I found Mrs. Bennet to be one of the quirkiest, weirdest, most annoying characters, yet I loved her still. All of the characters in this novel have their own amazing personality and I just loved them all. I wanted to be there with them and I just couldn't put the book down. I wanted to be in the story all the time and I kept coming back to it, just like wanting to know more about their lives. It was so exciting. After reading this I watched the 1995 BBC miniseries and the 2005 Keira Knightley adaptation. I would say I enjoyed the BBC miniseries slightly more as it had Colin as Mr. Darcy and I really enjoyed him playing that character. There was obviously slightly more in the BBC miniseries as they put it in 6 parts which were like 40-minute episodes, and I really enjoyed that. But then again, the film was really good as well, and I really loved the way Keira Knightley portrayed Lizzie Bennet. The man who played Mr. Bennet in the 2005 film also plays President Snow in The Hunger Games, which was weird to get my head around, but I actually really liked him as Mr. Bennet. All in all, I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars, and it got put onto my favourite shelf on Goodreads, and I would highly recommend to anyone who hasn't read any Austen yet, or hasn't read any classics and they want to delve in somewhere, this would be a brilliant book to start with. The next 2 books I actually read for the Bout of Books readathon, but I didn't do a wrap up of that as there was only 2 books, so I thought I would save it for this video. So the first book was Eleanor Park by Rowell, and I loved this book again. I had a really good reading month. Again, I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars and it has gone onto the favourite shelf on Goodreads. I must say, I'm becoming a bit of a fan of romance novels. I don't know what's going on. I have never been a fan of romance, but recently I have no idea what's happening, like Pride and Prejudice, Eleanor Park, Anna and the French Kiss. I flippin' love that book. Anyway, Eleanor Park follows the story of 2 people named Eleanor and Park, and they meet on the bus journey to school one day, and the unlikely friendship that occurs is really rather sweet. What I love most about this novel was that the insta-love thing wasn't going on, like it grew and you know that fondness for each other was there and they built upon that rather than suddenly like, whoa, I love this guy and that's just, I hate that, like I can't stand that in YA novels. there is a lot of insta-love and it's just not, it's ridiculous. But in Eleanor Park we see the love kind of grow and the relationship change and form, and it's really beautiful. What I really loved about this book was the fact that Eleanor and Park both had their own separate sensitive issues that Rainbow Rowell was writing about, and these issues were big things, and yet this wasn't overpowered by the love story, and these issues had their own standing and their own time to grow and evolve, and they weren't overpowered by the love, and I really enjoyed that. And I would recommend to anyone who's just looking for an unconventional love story or just a really cute, lovely book to read. And the second book I managed to read in the Bout of Books readathon was Vicious by V.E. Schwab. This book was also really good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. In the first half of this book we flick between 10 years ago and then the present day, and we follow the story of 2 young men who have discovered that they can give themselves superpowers, essentially. They've discovered a way to make it so that they can have their own superpowers. So 10 years ago is the time when they're giving themselves these powers, and the present day is like them now and the bad things that have happened since 10 years ago when they gave themselves these superpowers. I won't spoil it for you, but the way they get these superpowers is really interesting, and I found that to be one of the best parts of this novel. I'm actually really hoping that V.E. Schwab writes some more for this series, if it is going to be a series, because I think there could be so much more to this book and the characters, and she could build on this so much. It reminded me of the TV show Heroes, if anybody watched that. It's definitely that kind of thing with people who've got powers and they're trying to hide them from society and things are going on. So if you're a bit dubious about this book because of all the hype it gets, I would say definitely pick it up and give it a go if it sounds like something you'd be interested in anyway. It didn't disappoint me, and I would recommend it to anyone I know, as it was absolutely fantastic. And the final book that I read this month was I Am the Messenger by Markus Zusak, who wrote The Book Thief. This follows the story of a 19-year-old boy called Ed, who is a cab driver, and one day he gets a little ace of diamonds come through his postbox with 3 addresses and times on them. So Ed takes it upon himself to drive to these addresses at the time stated on the card and discover what it is at these houses that someone is trying to get him to do. So Ed works out that he's either supposed to be helping these people in these houses or doing something to change something in somebody else's life. So the premise of the rest of the story is that he is getting more of these cards through the post, and he's slowly helping other people and doing things around the neighbourhood and things like that. The pace of this book was really great, and it kept me wanting to read more and more. As soon as Ed was finishing helping someone, he was then helping someone else and then helping someone else, so it was constantly new stories and things being added in, and it was absolutely brilliant. So if you've never read anything by Markus Zusak before, or if you have read The Book Thief and you just want something else by Markus Zusak, then I would highly suggest this novel. It was brilliant, and I'm really glad that I have this on my shelf because I know I will probably read this book sometime again in the future. So those are all the books that I read in May. Let me know if you agree with my opinion, or if you think differently on those books, or if you haven't read any of those books, let me know what you read this month and if you joined in the readathon. I will leave a link to my blog where you can find all of the reviews of these books, and the links to my Facebook page, Goodreads, Twitter, Instagram, all of those things. If you want to be my friends, that would be awesome. I think that's everything for today, guys. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I'll see you soon. Bye!